reframing? I think we've been doing some of that. And how do I use it in a coaching session?
Reframe for me is a shorthand for perspective work. And perspective work can be quite arduous where you are looking at the perspective, you try to separate the perspective from the topic, and then look at the perspectives in a vacuum and then apply them to different topics and see what happens. Right. So it's to me, perspectives has it's like a mechanism and it's like pulling apart the mechanism and putting it back together and in a different way, but it's somewhat methodical. I really appreciate that though, because what it does, that perspective work, it helps you identify that it helps you separate the lens from the object that you're looking at. And when you can start to do that, you can start to see patterns in the lens. Often when, humans experience life, my experience too, the lens and the object are the same. Like it's hard to make a distinction. It's like, uh, yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes and, to see how your perspective is affecting your view of the object. But when you can start to see that pattern and start to get a sense of your lenses that you're using, the different lenses that you use in the different areas of your life, then you can move to reframe, which to me is just a shorthand, like a lens switch. I think it's most useful if you have already done the perspective work or have done the larger process of the mechanics of switching out lenses and knowing what that feels like and knowing the patterns that that you see in the world. Then that reframe can happen really quickly. And basically, all what a reframe is it's switching the lens. And done well, it can be really powerful. Done poorly, it can feel like toxic positivity, where something negative happens and you say, "No, I'm just kidding. This is the best thing ever because," or it can just feel like almost pedantic or demeaning in some way. So I feel like reframe is a tool to be used only after you're working with someone who has done perspective work, who has seen and has done the meaningful, deep work of perspective shifts.
What do you think? Do you think it can become a mindset the more work you do on yourself?
Oh, yeah, I think about this sometimes. Um, I think what it comes down to is surrounding yourself with people whose feedback and opinions you genuinely trust and whose feedback and opinions are usually correct. And that's really valuable. Like to have someone who's close to you who can give you feedback. It doesn't always feel good, but it's really useful to have that kind of feedback. So someone can say, "I know you love this. I know this is great. However, that's what you want. That's what you want." And I think at any stage of personal development, we need that. And we need that a lot. And I do not believe that, and I've been in the coach training world for almost 20 years now. I do not believe that there is any point that anyone will ever get to and says, "You know what? I've done my personal development work. I'm good. I'm done. I'm okay. I can move on." I don't think that ever exists, honestly. But I do think you reach certain levels. Do you think you do reach certain stages you have? I do think there is enough personal development growth that you start to gain a habit of being able to absorb feedback usefully in a way that is, you become anti-fragile. You become almost seeking it. There is an element of confidence in self, knowledge of self. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of who I am because of this work. It becomes, I mean, you start to go those places mindfully with someone listening to you for over a decade. I mean, being coached for over a decade, it's a big deal, you know? Yeah, I'm curious, right? Your experience too. I'm really curious. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Um, I mean, this is one of my favorite tools, really. I mean, I when I discovered it, it felt like magic almost. And I remember
Mm.
doing like opposite day in 2.0 as well, which was looking at how you look at different perspective, which felt like reframing and looking at things from a different lens. And I was like, wow, because having that power to choose and kind of more control over your life, I think it kind of speaks to that resilience and anti-fragility that you just said as well. And I mean, I must use reframing many times a day, if I'm honest with you,
Awesome.
many times a week. I'm using it all the time. And I think even in journaling, the question of what's the
Mm.
lesson from this? What was the learning from this? What was the takeaway from this pain or this adversity? Not that I don't think it's important to sit with your emotions. And I like the way you reference toxic positivity. I do think sometimes you got to work through things and move through it. And it's not just a matter of, oh, sunshines and rainbows. Yeah, I actually posted something today on LinkedIn, and my favorite ever quote, and I have to remind myself, is that there's no failure, there's only feedback.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
like, when I've lost my businesses and things didn't go great, and there's been all kinds of things that took me in different paths, I mean, I can now look at that and think, well, thank God, because now I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And that is being able to look at what was the lesson and what was the story in that. Yeah, even sometimes on a day to day, if I might be in a bit of a bad mood, or I might be being a bit impatient, or somebody said something, poor hubby, for example, and I'm like, hold on, what's the story I'm telling myself here?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see yourself sometimes. Like, it's hard to see your own personal development. Um, but I think it becomes there are clues. Like when you go back and let's say you go visit family or you go visit old friends and you realize, whoa, like I am very different from who I was just 2 years ago. There are taking establishing a business that grows you so much. You you have to go face to face with your fears and concerns around money, face to face with your fears and concerns around energy, perspectives, motivation, people in your life, like the challenges of it, dealing with tax forms. I mean, you name it. Like you gotta, you know what I mean? Like it's like game on, and there has to be a part of you that says, you know what, this game is worth it. This game, I'm doing this for something larger than all of those things. And if that's clear, then that's what was clear for me. And I know that, yeah, my mood's affected by, the ups and downs for sure. But I had to find a way to push the mood aside or at least use it to find that place of determination. And I spent a lot of time thinking, how can I get from doom and gloom to determination again? And if you can make that pathway consistent, I mean, that's a win. So yeah, it's helpful to talk about these things out loud. Hopefully this helps other coaches in the process.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
Yeah.
I know we're on time, and I think it reminds me of Zig Ziglar's work, and he's like, you got to do that daily checkup from the neck up, isn't it? You got to check in with yourself and see where your mindset's at, and you got to put
Mm-hmm.
your own oxygen mask on first because you can't serve from an empty vessel.
I think in the I know we have to finish here, but for me, like one of the things that I learned that I think is really useful, and I do think I do sit with it now too, is I think a full 50% of the work of entrepreneuring, of doing this work is your own motivation, self work of how do you stay consistent doing the hard things that you know that you need to do. And if you can, I think most people assume that or take that for granted. Like, of course I'm going to do, of course I'm going to jump in there and hit the ground running every morning. And I think maybe this should take maybe 5 to 10% of my creative energy. But no, Like there are times when it takes, 50% or more of your energy to just get yourself in the proper space. And I would not discount that. I that that is, it seems like, morning routines, things like that, are so valuable. You can't skip them. You gotta find a way to get your space right. One of my favorite things, I know we gotta end here. If you take care of the space, the particles fall into place. We say that a lot in our household.
I like that.
Take care of the space, particles will fall into place.
Thank you, John. I think that's a great note for us to end on.
Thank
Went
you very
quick
much.
as always. Thank you.
Super fun. Super fun. Thank you, community. Thank you for everyone listening to our Q&A sessions. And I'll have some announcements coming up pretty soon of some of the projects, some of the new initiatives that we're putting into place. But bottom line is, we're continuing to persist. So here we are.